It's a peaceful night in a quiet town, the kind where streetlights flicker and families sleep soundly, believing danger is far away. But inside one home, the silence breaks with a scream, sharp and desperate, cutting through the calm like a knife. A mother, the kind everyone trusts, the kind who bakes cookies and waves hello, has turned into something unrecognizable. Her hands, once gentle, are now covered in blood, her eyes wild with a darkness no one saw coming. The lives she touched lie shattered, the trust destroyed, leaving a trail of heartbreak and fear that will never fade. But she's not alone. Across America, in the cold, gray cells of maximum security prisons, there are women like her, women whose names send shivers through those who hear them. Aileen Wuornos, prowling highways, killing men who thought they were safe. Her rage, a storm no one could escape. Susan Smith, driving her car into a lake, her little boys strapped in, their cries silenced by water and lies. Tiffany Moss, watching a child waste away, her silence as deadly as any weapon. Diane Downs, shooting her own kids, blaming a stranger, her smile hiding a monster. Griselda Blanco, ruling a drug empire with an iron fist, leaving bodies piled up like trophies. Who are these women, really? What turned them from mothers, daughters, neighbors, into killers so feared they're locked away from the world? Was it pain, anger, a twisted need for control, or something we can't even grasp? And now, behind bars, what happens to them, to the families they destroyed, to the society that can't forget their names? These aren't just crime stories. They're raw, human tragedies, filled with pain, loss, and questions that keep us awake at night. Join us as we step into this dark world, where fear meets truth, and where the answers are as haunting as the crimes themselves. Welcome to a journey into the lives of 5 women, locked away in America's toughest prisons for crimes so violent, they shock us to our core. These women, Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Tiffany Moss, Diane Downs, and Griselda Blanco, are often overlooked in true crime stories, their names less known than the men who dominate the headlines. But their actions are no less devastating, their stories no less important. We're going to look at what they did, the lives they took, the families they shattered. We'll go back to their beginnings, to the pain, the struggles, the moments that might have led them down this path. And we'll step inside the prisons where they live now, where the walls are thick, the days are long, and the silence is heavy with regret, anger, or defiance. These stories are about real people, real pain, and real questions that tug at our hearts. The victims, their families, the communities left reeling. They're all part of this. And so are the women themselves, once ordinary, now marked as dangerous. We're not here to excuse what they did, but to understand, to feel the weight of their choices, and to ask, what does justice mean for them? Can they change, or are they beyond hope? Is redemption possible, or is it just a word we use to feel better? This journey will be emotional, suspenseful, and filled with the raw truth of human tragedy. Stick with us as we uncover these untold stories, where every detail matters, and every answer leaves us wondering. Let's start with Aileen Wuornos, a name that brings fear to those who remember her. In the late 80s and early 90s, she walked the lonely highways of Florida, her backpack slung over her shoulder, her eyes scanning for the next ride. Men, truck drivers, travelers, saw her as just another hitchhiker, someone needing help, someone safe. But Aileen was anything but safe. She killed 7 of them, each murder cold, calculated. Richard Mallory, a shop owner, was her first, December 1989. She lured him into the woods, promising company, then pulled out a .22 caliber pistol, shooting him multiple times, his body left in the dirt, his truck abandoned. The others followed. David Spears, found with 6 bullets in his chest. Charles Carskadden, shot 9 times. Peter Seams, His body never found, but his car traced back to Aileen. Each man had a life, families waiting for them to come home, wives checking the clock, kids asking when daddy would return. The highways became danger zones, drivers locking their doors, communities whispering about the killer on the loose, the fear spreading like wildfire. Then there's Susan Smith, a mother from Union, South Carolina, trusted by everyone in her small town. On October 25, 1994, she strapped her two little boys, Michael, 3, and Alex, 14 months, into their car seats. She drove to John D. Long Lake, the water dark and still under the night sky. She got out, looked at her boys, their innocent faces, and then let the car roll forward. It sank slowly, the water swallowing it whole. The boys trapped inside, their cries muffled by the rising water. Susan stood there, watching, then walked away. She lied to the world, saying a black man stole her car with her kids inside, sparking a nationwide search. For 9 days, the town prayed, held vigils, searched the woods, the lake, their hearts breaking. The truth came out, crushing them all. Her boys, drowned by their own mother, their laughter silenced forever. Her family, her neighbors, were left with guilt, anger, and a hole where those boys should have been, their trust in Susan shattered. Tiffany Moss's crime is quieter, but no less brutal. In Georgia, she was married, a stepmother to 10-year-old Aileen Moss, a bright girl with a smile that lit up rooms. But Tiffany didn't see her that way. She starved Amani, locking away food, ignoring her pleas. Amani's body grew weaker, her voice quieter, her eyes sinking into her skull. For weeks, Tiffany watched her waste away, doing nothing, her silence as deadly as any weapon. Imani died in 2013, alone, in pain, her body so thin it was unrecognizable. Tiffany and her husband burned the body, stuffing it into a trash bag, trying to erase the evidence. But the truth came out, the smell, the ashes, the horror. Imani's father, her siblings, were left with the weight of knowing they couldn't save her, their guilt heavy. The community reeled, asking how a child could suffer so much, unnoticed, unprotected, their trust in family shaken. Diane Downs, from Oregon, is another mother whose actions shocked the nation. On May 19, 1983, she drove her 3 kids, Christy, 8, Cheryl, 7, and Danny, 3, down a quiet road. She pulled over, turned off the engine, and took out a .22 caliber pistol. She shot them, one by one, the sound echoing in the night. Cheryl died, her small body slumped in the seat, blood pooling. Christy and Danny survived, but their lives were forever changed. Christy's arm paralyzed, Danny's legs useless. Diane drove to the hospital, claiming a stranger did it, her story full of holes. Christy's terrified testimony in court, Danny's struggle to walk again, painted the truth. Diane's smile, her calm, hid a monster. The town was stunned, parents holding their children tighter, wondering how a mother could do this, their sense of safety gone. And then there's Griselda Blanco, known as the cocaine godmother, a drug lord from Miami. In the 70s and 80s, she built an empire, dealing cocaine, her power unmatched. But it came with blood. She ordered murders, dozens, maybe hundreds, rivals, enemies, even innocent bystanders caught in her crossfire. Bodies piled up, left in streets, in cars, shot execution style, a message of fear. Her victims included fathers, brothers, sons, their families left to grieve, their neighborhoods living in terror. One hit, in 1979, saw 3 men gunned down in a shopping mall, shoppers screaming, blood on the floor. Griselda's reign was violence, her name whispered in fear, her legacy one of destruction. Her enemies' families left with nothing but loss. Their lives forever changed. These women, their crimes, they're not just headlines. They're stories of lives taken, families broken, communities left reeling. Aileen's victims, men with dreams, Now just memories, their families haunted by what-ifs. Susan's boys, their laughter silenced, their mother their killer, their town betrayed. Imani's pain, ignored, her life stolen by neglect, her family shattered. Diane's kids, shot by the one who should protect them, their trust destroyed, their town fearful. Griselda's victims, caught in a war they didn't choose, their families left with nothing but grief, their neighborhoods scarred. These acts, so violent, so personal, leave us asking, what drove them? And what do we do with the pain they left behind? To understand these 5 women, Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Tiffany Moss, Diane Downs, and Griselda Blanco, we have to go back to the beginnings that shaped them, the pain they carried, and the struggles that might have led to their crimes. Their stories are hard, filled with hurt, and they force us to look at the raw truth of human life, where childhood can be a battleground, and the scars last forever. Aileen Wuornos grew up in Michigan, unwanted from the start. Born to a mother who left her, she was raised by her grandparents. But it wasn't a home. It was a place of fear. Her grandfather beat her. Her grandmother turned a blind eye. And by age 11, Aileen was trading sex for cigarettes, her innocence stolen. She was alone, cast out, living on the streets by 15, pregnant and abandoned. That life of rejection, of abuse, left her hard, angry, and with no trust in anyone. Did that pain, that feeling of being worthless, push her to walk those highways, killing men who picked her up, seeing them as threats, as symbols of the world that hurt her? Susan Smith, in South Carolina, had a different start, but it was no less troubled. She grew up in a home where her stepfather abused her, his hands where they shouldn't be, his words tearing at her self-worth. By her teens, she was battling depression, feeling trapped, like the walls were closing in. She tried to end it all, swallowing pills, but she survived, only to find herself married young, with 2 boys, and still drowning in her pain. That desperation, that feeling of being cornered, did it lead her to drive that car into the lake, her sons in the back, a final act to escape, to make the world see her suffering? Tiffany Moss, in Georgia, grew up in chaos, her home a place of yelling, fighting, and neglect. Her parents were absent, her life a series of moves, schools, and instability. By the time she was an adult, she had a stepdaughter, Imani, and a life that was falling apart. Her mental health struggles were there, hidden behind closed doors, but they were real. Paranoia, anger, a mind that couldn't cope. Did that chaos, that feeling of being overwhelmed, make her ignore Imani's cries, let her waste away, a child she was supposed to protect, turned into a victim of her own brokenness? Diane Downs, in Oregon, wanted freedom, but at what cost? Her childhood was marked by strict parents, a father who controlled, a mother who demanded perfection. She rebelled, married young, had 3 kids, but she wanted more. A life without ties, without responsibility. Her mental health was a mess, mood swinging, lies coming easy. That need for freedom, that refusal to be tied down, did it push her to shoot her children, to claim a stranger did it, to free herself from the life she hated? Griselda Blanco, in Colombia, came from poverty, her early years a fight for survival. She saw violence early, her neighborhood a place where drugs and guns were as common as bread. By her teens, she was involved, running errands for cartels, learning the trade. Greed took hold, a desire for power, for money, for respect. Did that background, that world of violence and need, lead her to build a drug empire, to order hits, to leave bodies in her wake, seeing people as pawns in her game? These women's pasts are not excuses for what they did, but they are part of the story, the hard truth of how pain can turn to violence, how desperation can lead to choices no one wants to understand. Aileen's abuse made her see the world as a threat. Susan's depression trapped her in a life she couldn't escape. Tiffany's chaos overwhelmed her. Diane's need for freedom blinded her, and Griselda's greed turned her into a killer. Their crimes are theirs, but their beginnings, filled with hurt and struggle, show us the human side, the side that asks why, that makes us feel the weight of their choices, and leaves us wondering if we could have seen, could have helped, before it was too late. Now, these 5 women, Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Tiffany Moss, Diane Downs, and Griselda Blanco, sit behind bars, locked away in America's toughest prisons, places where the air is heavy, the walls are cold, and every day is a fight to survive. High-security prisons are not like the outside world. They're a different kind of reality, one where freedom is a memory, and danger is always close. For these women, their cells are their homes, their lives reduced to concrete and steel, their every move watched, controlled, and restricted. The conditions are harsh, meant to punish, meant to isolate. Many of them spend hours, sometimes days, in solitary confinement, locked in a small room with no windows, no sound, just the echo of their own thoughts. It's a place where time slows down, where the silence can drive you mad. They get 1 hour outside their cell, maybe, if they're lucky. But even then, it's in a cage, the sky above them blocked by bars. Contact with others is limited. No hugs, no handshakes, just voices through a slot in the door, or a quick visit behind thick glass. Their families on the other side, a world away. Danger is everywhere. These prisons house the most violent, the most unpredictable, and for these women, every step is a risk. Guards watch, but they can't see everything, and fights break out. Shanks are made from spoons, and alliances are formed, broken, or turned deadly. It's a place where trust is a luxury, where a wrong look can mean a fight, where survival means staying alert, always on guard. Aileen Wuornos, in her cell in Florida, screamed at night, her voice echoing through the halls, a sound of pain and rage. She was haunted by her past, the abuse, the loneliness, the faces of the men she killed. She talked to herself, paced the floor, her mind a storm of memories she couldn't escape. She fought with guards, threw trays, her anger spilling out, a reminder of the life that broke her. Did she want to change, or was she too far gone, lost in the darkness that defined her? Susan Smith, in South Carolina, writes letters, her handwriting shaky, her words pleading for forgiveness. She sits in her cell, the silence heavy, the guilt heavier. She talks to counselors, goes to church services, trying to find peace. But the faces of her boys, Michael and Alex, are always there, their cries in her dreams. She's quiet, keeps to herself, but the other inmates know her story, and some whisper, some yell, calling her a monster. Does she mean her apologies? Or is it just a way to survive, to ease the weight of what she did? Tiffany Moss in Georgia sits alone, her silence loud, her presence unsettling. She doesn't talk much, doesn't fight, just watches, her eyes empty, her mind a mystery. She spends hours staring at the wall, the memory of a Manny, the child she let die, a shadow she can't shake. Other inmates avoid her, sensing something off, something broken. She's in solitary often, the isolation a punishment, but also a reflection of her life. Alone, disconnected, a woman who let chaos win. Is she thinking, feeling, or is she just existing, waiting for time to pass? Diane Downs, in California, manipulates, always scheming, her smile as sharp as ever. She's charming, talks to guards, writes letters to pen pals, but it's all a game. She's tried to escape, planned attacks, her mind always working, always looking for a way out. She talks about her kids, but it's twisted, blaming others, rewriting history. The other inmates know her. Some fear her, some hate her, but she keeps going, her defiance a shield. Does she believe her lies, or is it all part of the act, a way to stay in control? Griselda Blanco, before her death, ruled with fear, even behind bars in Florida. She was older, but her power lingered, her name enough to keep others in line. She made deals, used her reputation, her voice a command. Guards watched her closely, knowing her history, the bodies she left behind. She didn't fight much, but her presence was a threat, her eyes cold, her mind still sharp. Did she regret? Or was she proud, seeing herself as a queen, even in chains? These women's lives in prison are a mix of isolation, fear, and attempts at change or defiance. The cells are small, the days are long, and the danger is real. Aileen screams, Susan writes, Tiffany sits, Diane schemes, Griselda ruled, each one coping, or not, with the weight of their crimes, the silence of their cells, and the judgment of the world outside. It's a hard truth, a life where pain meets punishment, where emotions run raw, and where we see the human side, broken, struggling, and sometimes unyielding. The crimes of Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Tiffany Moss, Diane Downs, and Griselda Blanco didn't end when they were locked away. They left scars that stretch far beyond their cells, into the lives of families, communities, and the very fabric of society. For the victims' families, every day is a reminder of loss, a wound that never heals. They wake up to empty chairs at the table, to birthdays without laughter, to memories that hurt as much as they comfort. The pain is raw, constant, a weight they carry with every step. Take Aileen's victims, the men she killed. Their families left wondering why, left with photos and memories, but no answers. Richard Mallory's sister, holding his old jacket, crying at night, asking what he did to deserve such a violent end. Susan's boys, Michael and Alex, their grandparents visiting their graves, whispering to the stones, wishing they could have saved them, their voices breaking with guilt and grief. Amani's mother, Tiffany's stepdaughter's real mom, looking at old drawings, hearing her laughter in dreams, knowing she failed to protect her, the silence of her absence deafening. Diane's surviving children, scarred physically and emotionally, living with the memory of their mother's gun, their trust in family shattered forever. Griselda's victims, countless families in Miami and beyond, mourning sons, brothers, fathers, lost to her drug wars, their homes now quiet, their lives upended by violence. For society, these women are a warning, a puzzle we can't solve. They scare us because they look like us. Mothers, neighbors, women we pass on the street. Their crimes make us lock our doors tighter, hug our kids closer, question who we trust. Communities where they struck are forever changed. In Florida, where Aileen hunted, truck drivers talk about her, their routes now tinged with fear. In South Carolina, Susan's town still whispers about the lake, parents watching their kids play, haunted by her betrayal. In Georgia, Tiffany's neighborhood struggles with guilt, asking why no one saw, why no one helped Amani. In Oregon, Diane's community remembers the hospital, the blood, the lies, their faith in family shaken. In Miami, Griselda's shadow lingers, streets once ruled by fear, now cautious, families still mourning. Public reactions are mixed, raw, and intense. There's fear, fear of women who break the mold, who defy what we think women should be. Anger, anger at their crimes, at the pain they caused, at the system that sometimes failed to stop them. And fascination, a dark curiosity that draws us in, making us watch, read, talk about them, trying to understand what makes them tick. Aileen's story became a movie, Susan's a headline, Tiffany's a courtroom drama, Diane's a book, Griselda's a legend. But behind the fascination is pain, real and deep. The hard truth is, these women changed lives forever. Families are broken, communities are scarred, and society is left grappling with the fallout. The pain left behind is heavy. A mother's tears, a child's empty room, a town's lost trust. These women's crimes are not just stories. They're wounds, open and bleeding. A reminder of the cost of violence, the weight of loss, and the human struggle to find meaning in the aftermath. We're left asking, how do we heal? How do we prevent this? And how do we live with the truth that these women, once ordinary, became monsters, leaving us to pick up the pieces? Now that we've seen the pain, the loss, and the fear left behind by Aileen Wuornos, Susan Smith, Tiffany Moss, Diane Downs, and Griselda Blanco, we're left with hard questions, the kind that sit heavy on your heart. Can these women change, really change, deep down where it matters? Aileen, screaming in her cell. Susan, writing letters. Tiffany, silent. Diane, scheming. Griselda, ruling. Are they capable of feeling regret, of becoming someone new? Or is that just a dream we tell ourselves? Should they be forgiven, even if they do change? The families, the victims' empty rooms, the communities scarred. Do they have to forgive? Or is that asking too much, too cruel? What does justice mean for these women, locked away in cells, their lives reduced to concrete and steel? Is it the years, the decades, the life sentences, the death penalty for some? Is it enough to balance the scales, to ease the pain of those left behind? Or is it just a way to say we've done something, anything, to make it right? We're left wondering, feeling the weight of these questions, the unfairness, the hurt, the need for answers. And what about mental health, gender, the prison system itself? Aileen's abuse, Susan's depression, Tiffany's chaos, Diane's lies, Griselda's greed. These are pieces of their stories, pieces that make us ask, could help have stopped this? Could therapy, support, a different life? They're women, and that matters. Society sees them differently, expects gentleness, not violence. And when they break that, we're shocked, confused. Are we locking them away to heal, to fix what's broken? Or are we just trying to forget, to push them out of sight, out of mind, hoping the pain goes away with them? These questions hurt. They challenge us. They make us feel the raw truth of their crimes, their lives, and our own struggle to find meaning. We're left asking, feeling the weight, wondering if justice, redemption, healing, if any of it is possible, or if we're just left with the echoes of their violence, searching for a way forward. If this journey into the lives of these women has moved you, made you think, or left you with questions, we want to hear from you. What do you think about Aileen, Susan, Tiffany, Diane, Griselda? Can they change, deep down? Or are they beyond hope, beyond redemption? Share your thoughts below. Tell us what you feel, what you believe, what this story means to you. If this story hit you hard, if it made you feel, think, question, then please hit that like button to show your support. And if you want more true crime stories that dig deep, that make you feel the raw truth, the emotions, the hard questions, then subscribe to our channel. We're here to tell these stories, to keep asking, to keep learning, and we need you with us. Let's keep this conversation going, together.